pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
All right, friends and family, boys and girls, and people around the world. We got international fame here. Well, kind of. He's from Russia. It is my pleasure to introduce Max Bessonov. He is a real estate investor. By day, we're going to learn what he does by day. By night, he is an investor. He has 17 units. He's from Russia. He has a sexy accent for all you ladies, but he is married. Yeah, okay. So I know your wife's probably going to listen to this, and she's like, who is that psycho savvy landlord guy? Anyway, but I really don't know Max. I have ran into Max all the time at the local real estate meeting. We bump. We've maybe even had dinner together at the RIA group, and he is always positive, and I'd never understand who he is or what he does. He's just genuine, and I can tell he's like some sort of a technical, I'm going to say nerd, but you're not a nerd. But,
I'm a nerd.
Okay, so and I'm loud and out of control, and he always has passion for when we're talking about real estate. And I was like, and I interviewed Jonathan Clocks not too long ago, and he's like, man, you got to interview Max. He's got a great story. So for no further ado, welcome to the Savvy Landlord Radio Show. Hello, Max.
Hi, Steven. How's it going?
All right. Now, be bold. So you're from Russia. Tell us how you got to, first of all, to the United States, but then Oklahoma. How long you've been in Oklahoma, or how long you've been in the United States? You were born in Russia?
I was born in Russia, right. And when I was 16, I was just finished high school in Russia and entered college. And
At 16?
Yeah, we only have 10 years in school over there.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
And I just enrolled, and then my mom found some ad in the newspaper to be an exchange student here in States. That was back in '96, and then so we applied, and a family here in Oklahoma actually. It's basically you send your application, you write an essay about, you send some pictures, and then a family here picks. They go through a bunch of files and they say, okay, we kind of would like to have this guy over.
Cool.
And so actually, they're just like my family. We're still keeping in touch. They live in Arkansas now, but they were here in Spire, Oklahoma. So that was my first.
Okay, so here in you came here for college.
For high school, actually.
For high school,
I went to 12th grade. So what I did is I took a sabbatical in college there and came here to finish a second high school.
Oh, right on.
Yeah,
so how old were you? 16?
16, yeah.
So you graduated high school in Russia, and you came to Oklahoma City to go to high school. Or not Oklahoma.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay, and then did you go back to Russia?
No. Well, I went for the summer, but while I was here, I figured that I really wanted to stay here. So I enrolled at OSU here.
Cool.
And then came back.
What program at OSU?
I started out as an aerospace engineer. And then changed my majors a couple of times from engineer. And then when I was here for the first couple of semesters, and then applied to Boston University.
Ooh.
And moved there. And then when I went back to Russia, I found a sponsor to pay for it. And what they would do is I would day trade for them basically here, because back then in Russia had like really crazy inflation. So like a lot of companies, let's say they would want to build a school, right? So they'll get all the money up front, but it's devalued very fast. So I would keep it alive for them and investing here.
Their finances, their money.
Their money,
cool.
Right. And basically provide them a return. And then back then, late 90s here, a monkey was half a brain.
So almost, that's like your first private money.
Basically, right. Yeah, that was my deal. I had to double the money at least, and then everything else I could keep for my tuition, because I had to pay like $36,000 for tuition. So, and Boston was pretty expensive.
This is gnarly. So someone sponsored you, said, "Hey, I like you." Did you send them a photo? No, I'm just playing. So
Matt was there.
Okay, so they like you. You come over here and you're like, "I'm going to give you a return on your money. You're going to bet on me to do well in school, and I'm going to use your money and play in the stock market."
Right.
And you gave him a return?
I did for a while, right. This was, and that was my first kind of entrance into some investing. What I did is I started out with $100,000, and I went up to like 1.2 million.
Nice.
And then I lost it in a single transaction.
And when you got wild and you just bet the farm?
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
Did you get the guy's return back?
I gave him some of the return, right? So this was already after, basically this was already kind of house money,
Dang.
But like when you're making returns like that, it's it's hard to set aside like $50,000, right? Because it's like, whoa, but I could double it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You get all kind of wild.
But you
juiced it all the way up to $1 million. That's pretty remarkable.
Back then, this was right before the high-tech bubble, and we all had Ethernet connection in school. Everybody was a laptop. Like half the class, you kind of listening to a professor was half an ear and day trading, at the same time, and so that's pretty interesting.
It was real
times.
hot.
Yeah.
So are you illegal? No, I'm just playing.
I actually got a green card. Yeah.
How'd you get your green card? How'd you become official?
That took a while. Basically, right. So when I first came here, I was on a student visa.
Right.
Then you stay for this like practical training, and then for a job was a work visa, and then it's like a long process to apply, and you go through all of the different years and years of waiting, and then finally, we actually did when we applied back for a green card in 2007. It's like the day we sent in the application, I said, okay, we're not taking anymore. So we actually had to sign a petition and sue the government to like go through, and then they finally accepted it, but it took like 4 years to get like. So we now had it for almost like 4.5 years, and once you have it for 5, we're gonna apply for citizenship here in a few months. Actually,
That's awesome. Now, did you marry an American?
No, my wife is actually. I met her. So when I finished BU, I basically had like my American family here in Oklahoma. So I actually came here for a few months, and just entered the graduate program because I wanted to go to a PhD program
PhD.
at BU or in
Baylor University.
Either at Boston, somewhere in Boston. I applied to like Harvard and MIT, and they were kind of all three universities are they use a lot of the same. You could go to all the libraries in there, but they wanted you to have like a master. Like if you get accepted to PhD,
you have to have a master's.
You basically get a free ride. Like you get an assistantship that pays enough for the tuition.
Cool.
But you still needed like 60 hours of like a master's program. So I figured, okay, OSU is cheap, so I'm gonna go there, and I'm taking PhD classes here. But while I'm in there, so I got my master's degree.
What's your master's degree in?
Information systems.
Oh, CSI, computer information systems.
Right. So like when I was in Boston, basically the deal was that I had to do a finance degree. But what I did is I used my finance classes as electives in information systems, and my information systems classes as electives in finance, and got 2 of them at the same time.
Okay, and then you paid for college through your hustle with the stock market.
Right,
okay.
The stock market.
Wow. And so do you have a PhD now?
No. Basically, while I was taking the classes, I got enough credits to get a master's, and then I got a job offer here. So I just
and then you can't stay in Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma, yeah.
Shut up.
So you were Cancer Society.
At the Cancer Society?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still actually there. It's been 11 years now. So.
What, like a dosimetrist? Like, what do you calculate?
No. I started out doing IT support.
Oh, okay.
And then now I'm a developer for the last few years. So we build systems.
What hospital are you at?
No, it's not the hospital. Basically, we have the American Cancer Society. I think we're one of the largest nonprofits out there.
Cool.
So we have a shared services center here, about 5,000 offices throughout the country, and then a lot of the financials come through here, donations. So we build systems,
computer systems.
Right. Basically, I don't know how to cure cancer, but at least I get to build systems that help to get the money in the hands of the people that.
Yeah, what's so crazy is my wife worked at Procure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she worked at OU. She got a radiation therapist.
A couple of people that went there from ACS.
Their computer, I can't remember what German company that runs the software over there, but the techs over there are incredible. But she opened Procure. She was from OU and then went to Procure and then just quit there in 2014 because real estate takes care of business. Right. Awesome.
That's the thing, yeah. A lot of people jump in and say, okay, I want to quit my job. I'm just going to do this. But,
you're making an impact.
I like my job. It's a lot easier with the banks, when you have a job to come and talk to them. But, and it has a meaning.
Okay. This is so exciting. We got so much to cover. All right. So now you're in Oklahoma. You applied for a job at the American Cancer Association. You do tech, IT, whatever you do all day. And then how did you get the real estate bug? I mean, you got 17 units. You're from Russia. I mean, you started with no money, but you were pretty well off.
That's actually why I basically that was my choice. Do I keep going with my degree or I get a job offer? Because at some point I just started living on the credit cards because, and I'm a big finance geek. Yeah. So what we did, my wife and I, we met here at grad school. And,
cool.
And then she had a crazy requirement, had to go back to Ukraine for 2 years because that was her visa. Like they paid for her graduate degree. US,
and you had to satisfy that for the free ride.
Right, and basically they wanted, that's what they did. Like they bring people in, you kind of get some culture from here, get a degree from here, but then you have to go back for 2 years. So hopefully you kind of start spreading, the American way, I guess. But
sure, that's great.
But, yeah, we met here, we got married.
In the United States?
In the United States, right. We haven't met our in-laws for 7 years, the first time. Still haven't met our dads, just on Skype, but like her mom came over here.
Who is this guy?
Yeah, like her mom came over here when we had our first kid, and my mom came like a year later. So like that's how we finally met. But
have you been back to Russia?
Not since I think last time I went was in 2000.
Cool. Well, if you ever go back and the Savvy Landlord speaks, that's me. I'll come over there. We could do it. We can do a seminar. IT
that's
/
when I was growing up. There's no private property. There's no real
Oh yeah,
estate.
they control everything. It's pretty,
right now.
It's kind of free reign,
right now,
but it's really
knows?
not.
It's kind of going back.
It's kind of Wild West over there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had no money, living on credit cards. How in the world did you even hear about real estate? I mean, you're all into tech. You're all into analytical data.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate is
reading.
Just read. Okay, so how'd you bump into it?
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
You read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that.
And but the whole idea really struck me because I'm coming off. So one day I wake up, I have this 1.2 million in the bank, and then by the end of the day I owe 60 grand. So,
oh man,
and
diarrhea.
What's really sad is because they had automatically sold off the position because the market was going crazy, and by the end of the day, it went back to 90% of what it was, and it's like, man, if it didn't, I would
just held on,
right? Yeah. Well, but basically, you just realize there's no control.
True.
I mean, on stock market, we had the internship I had. It was, you turn around for 30 seconds, you turn back, and markets are going crazy. Actually, it was one time we were on the trading floor, and they actually stopped all the quotes like for 30 seconds, and because there's some refinery blew up in Texas, and all the oil futures started going crazy, and everybody is just overheated, so they just like turn off the monitors and say, okay, everybody stop the trading for 30 seconds so like everybody can cool down.
Dang. Okay, so how long? When was your first rental?
Okay, the very first one. So,
well, because I want to bounce back. Okay, leads into the question. So you've been in real estate for a while. How long have you been in there now? In real
almost
estate?
5 years. Since
okay, 5 years.
And so we started out, and that's kind of an interesting. So we actually got 11 units at once in our first transaction.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just one quick question because it's burning in my mind here. So you've been in real estate for 5 years, and you made $1 million in the stock market. Does your mind ever attack you to go back into the stock market? Do you still dabble back there, or do you believe real estate now? Because you can see the consistent. You believe it, okay? Because it's consistent,
right?
Because the
stock market, we do some index funds, and that's what I have. That's basically the idea. Because when you start, it's a little bit at a time. But then now you look back on like a decade. It's been ups, downs,
only
4%. But it is going up in general. But it's more like a 20-30 year deal.
Yeah,
where
you can't get wealthy. I don't know how many millionaires do you know that are rolling? I mean, very minimal, and they lose it all in the stock market. Just like you were a millionaire for 2 minutes,
and then that's it.
And you could have got it back. You probably had diarrhea. All right, so let's get back into your first deal, real estate. So you read a book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. Kind of perked your interest, and then what happened?
I actually bought Carlton Sheets course
back
in the days, and then I went through it, but then it's this whole thing, you got to call a lot of people and do this. But what I really understood is, okay, you have to just be open and look for opportunities. And
that's right.
So I'm at work. I actually we had this accountant guy, who he's been in real estate. So I talked to him, I see what he's doing, and then basically, he was getting ready to retire, and I just asked, hey, do you want to just sell them to me?
Just like that.
Yeah, just like that. And then,
and you're all humble. Would you like to sell it to me?
He thought about it, and then, we knew each other fairly well. And
he was an intellectual as well, right? He was savvy.
Yeah. Okay. He's been doing, so they've been doing it for 20 to 30 years. Some of those, they basically had them for, so it was 3 duplexes and 5 single-family houses, right? And they had them all paid off. So
don't tell me you're about to tell me creative financing. Did he own or carry them?
Yes. So I asked, so would you finance? Because basically I figured out, so think about, you going to be getting the payments, but no longer have to manage them, right?
And you wouldn't have the tax burden.
Exactly. That's actually the biggest selling point, because they say, you pay taxes over time. By the time, and especially since they paid off, there's no capital gain until you really get to it. And so what we did is, I said, well, let's figure out the mortgage on this. And so we did. And so for that one, I figured, if we do like 15-year mortgage, it's not going to cash flow.
Wow.
So what I did is that, well, how about we do a 30-year?
Did you negotiate the price?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. We did the price. So what I did is, I didn't even look at any comps or what I did is I went strictly off what I figured. Okay, it's going to be I'm buying a set of units. It's almost like
11 units.
They're all spread out.
Okay.
But let's look at as an apartment, right? So like I'm looking, okay, what rent can I get? And so I went off of the whole valuing as a commercial, right?
Performance.
Right. Basically.
So you're basing it on the numbers of what you're as a cash machine,
right? Rather than
versus as appreciation or potential. Okay, so
in some book I actually read, you shouldn't do thousands. I actually, when I made an offer, it was close to 520 something, but it was like 327 and 95 cents or something like that. Actually in the contract. Okay. It looked crazy.
That's funny.
But because then it's like, well, I have a model, right?
Well,
I
okay,
calculate the model, and that's what it is, right?
Okay, so let's just for fun. What was the cash flow in 11 units? Like, what was the gross rents? Do you remember?
The gross rents, when he had them, they were about a little of under 5,000.
Okay.
But he had one of them that he had the guy since 91. We actually still have him. And
so you knew it was under rented.
It was under rented, right?
And was that? Did you even tell him that?
Yeah,
you did.
Knew, yeah,
he knew. Okay.
He knew, yeah.
Because I usually don't tell people that. After I buy it, then I tell.
He gave me the last 2 years of what what he was actually getting. Right. So like, and he's an accountant. He had all the spreadsheets and everything for it.
Yeah, I love buying from accountants because they understand.
Right. We actually went over, and because he's showing me, and okay, so look, like a cell phone, right? You're gonna have that whether it's rentals or not. I know that there's certain expenses that you're gonna have whether you have them or not, and certain expenses that are just because of rentals.
So how about maintenance? Like what your number? How'd you come up with the number to offer him, or did he throw out a number first?
We basically went off. I ran through my model, and I tried to come up with some percentages of what the maintenance will be, what management. I figured I'm gonna have to have management because there's no way I'm going to take over 11 units at once. I did.
And it was your first deal. Were you nervous at all?
Deal. Oh yeah.
You got balls of steel, homie. I mean, you made $1 million on the stock market, lost it all overnight. Then hey, by the way, let me buy 11 units. That brings in $5,000 a month,
and let's carry the note.
And carry the which is very savvy.
So what I did is so I actually asked him. So that was kind of a fine conversation we had. I'm saying, well, it won't cash flow in 15, and he's going, Max, how long do you think I'm going to live? 30 years, right? I'm saying, well, how about it? We amortize it over 30, but we'll balloon at 12.
12 years?
Yeah.
Savvy.
So now it looks like 30, but I had 12 years to come up.
That's awesome.
Eventually refinance. What's really cool is that's basically.
So you have 12 years to figure it out.
So for the down payment, we figured about 10%. So I had to come up with $50,000 for that. But what I did is
so it's a $500,000 price,
yeah.
and you have to come up with 50.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And ever since I was in college, and like as soon as I turned 18, how you go down campus and it's like, hey, sign up for credit card and get this T-shirt. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
I did that. I did
and then
that too.
The first thing, as soon as I got it, it's like $500. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can use it to like
buy a stereo.
No. I figured I want to be able to like charge a tuition on it or something like that, right? So what I did is, I lived in the dorms at first, and it's like, we'll like get together, go to Walmart. People are like buying furniture and clothes. I'm like, And the paying was cash because, back then, we're all 18-year-olds, right? I mean, the paying was cash
this is
checks.
awesome.
So I'm saying, hey, give me the cash, I'll pay it. And so I just did that for a few months. So it looks like I'm spending thousands of dollars and paying them right away. So they keep increasing my limit.
Nice.
And I am obsessed with building the credit. I mean, my wife and I would compete.
Me too.
We're like, okay,
I'm obsessed with it.
You like.
We need to have a show based on
points
that.
On me. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to bring you back on that. All right, keep going.
It's so by that time we had good credit, but I mean it did allow us. So by the time we got to grad school, right?
You had like 850 credit score.
It's an 814.
That's awesome.
But when I got to grad school, I'm on a student visa. I'm only allowed to work up to 20 hours on campus.
Okay.
Right. So no money. I mean, that's not enough.
Yeah, and they know that you can't go nowhere. They lower. Right, they give you $7 an hour.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I know. They work the system.
What they did is I had the deal where normally as a foreigner you pay out of state tuition, which is like 3 times more. But if you're working on campus, they would allow you. They would waive the out of state tuition, and that was more than the actual.
I love that you just said
salary. Yeah.
I love that you just said that you're a foreigner.
I actually been here longer than I've been
All
there.
right,
Yeah.
So let's focus on. Okay, how'd you come up with $50K?
Okay, so by that time we had good enough credit. Where I'm really obsessed with building the credit where I really had an idea. I want to be able to buy a house on a credit card.
Okay,
so
that's a
so how
that's an idea.
They send you those checks 0% for 12 months.
18
months.
Yeah, I throw those away. All right, keep going.
Why?
So you tell me. Let me tell you this. So you wrote this guy a check from your credit card for 50.
For like 36. Yeah.
36.
Still put in some money. Yeah.
That at what interest rate?
0.
Oh, okay.
For 18 months.
For 18 months. Okay, there you go, little math wizard.
Yeah, it's not 20. It's not
21%.
No,
I was like,
no. If you just write like a cash, it's 23%. But this is like 0%, and they'll usually take like 2% to write a check, right? So I figured, okay, so that's 2% a year, because then next year you roll it to the next credit card, But you have to manage it. This is
because you can get in trouble. Yeah, this is awesome though. I like the concept.
Have multiple cards,
if you can handle it. I mean,
right.
I love it. I mean, but you bought an asset. $500,000 asset on a credit card, and so obviously you paid that off over time.
Yeah, within the first year we pay.
We
knocked it down so that I think we might have rolled. We might have had like maybe 10 left by the end, and we rolled it over to another check and then paid that off. Right.
So but 3 or 4 years of free interest.
This whole, at some point, I'm scared of repairs and stuff, estimating them. But it would be good to get into flipping at some point where if it makes sense economically, because you can go write the check, get a house.
Well, you can learn. You can learn
12 months to figure it out, basically, and refinance.
Okay, so when you put this offer in, you try to generally calculate the repairs. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you acquired this asset, and this has been going on for 5 years,
right?
And this guy's been super happy.
Oh yeah.
And so then, okay, so have you increased the rents?
I write him. Oh, immediately. So like this one guy, he's been there since '91.
Yeah.
He was paying $250, and he never complained. Which,
of course
not.
Why
would you? Right? So I mean, I did have to raise it like to $475 because the other.
And he stayed. That guy stayed.
He stayed.
Cool.
But he had 20 years of good return, right? And I still do it. Like I raise it, couple of percent, 1%, every year.
Yes, I remember this conversation you asked me.
He's still on the market right now. It's like 3 duplexes standing together, so it's like 6 units. I try to keep them about the same. So like when we got them, he was renting them for $450. By now we're like at $630 on each unit. So it's and that's the best part, because the first year was tough. I mean, we didn't cash flow the first year because there's always repairs. There's the second year we did like a little, like a couple grand, in positive.
Cool.
What's cool is on the taxes, it looks like you're losing mad money, right?
Oh, I know that game. Yeah. All right, so you close the deal. Okay, so what are you cash flowing now? How much did you increase it by? What's your debt coverage?
So
what's your debt service?
Right now, I try to keep it no more than 80%. On credit, just because it's better with the banks. Because so then our second deal was a couple of years later. What we did is also I actually found so we had this one management guy, property manager, was kind of taking too long to do the repairs, to find tenants, and he didn't have systems where I could, he would be like behind on filling out all the stuff so that I wouldn't know for a couple of months what's going on.
Or
so
if they were vacant.
If they're vacant, yeah.
Okay.
Or like, why does it take so long to be vacant? And so I replaced him with this other property management company. And at first we had some bumpy roads because they had some people in there where also we had like an insurance claim where we got the charge that they fixed the siding, and then I'm getting a letter from insurance company, hey, you didn't fix it, you got to check. It's like, we might cancel your insurance. I'm like, what? Because what's going on?
Yeah. I'm
relying on this guy. So like, okay, I got to start like looking around and actually checking out in the properties, right?
Was that guy shady?
It was something going on. It was them internally. They actually fired that lady that was in charge of it, and then they did some reorg, and they were. At that time, I was ready to leave them. It's just that it's like, oh, now I have to find somebody else.
Well, that's the big horror story for people getting into real estate. I don't want to be a landlord. I understand that, but property management companies and sometimes
it's tough,
tend to take you for a ride. So how'd you get your second deal?
So by now, once we settled, this was the property management. Basically,
and you stuck with
that
them.
Company. They had a client from California, and I guess he got in trouble that he needed to sell, and he had 6 units. He had 6 houses. So, and
let me get this straight. You're telling me that you've only have 2 transactions and you got 17 units?
Well, we had we then bought one, we sold one, and then we bought one.
Okay, cool. This is awesome.
Yeah. So he had 6 units. He bought them for $340, I think.
$340 for the 6 units, which is like what, 18?
Like several years before.
Okay.
And by now they're like, they're not worth that. I mean, they weren't worth, because he bought them right before the crash too.
Yeah, California investors.
Yeah, because for them, right? It's like, oh wow, you can get 6 houses for $300. A house is $80,000. It's like, get 5. It's like no. I actually looked at one apartment complex. It was like a 16 unit, and they wanted $420 for it, and they bought it for like $440.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is way too much. I know it's 16 units, but it's it's not that good.
Rough neighborhood.
It's rough neighborhood. It's not gonna go. I mean, it's one of those where it's like you just bleed it, and and it's like, I actually told them, okay, if you guys take $250, take it. But and they, obviously they wouldn't. But it's like, I think they also were paying utilities, so that right there was just killing
no
them.
utilities.
Yeah, it's that
people leave their AC on all day long.
I had one of them where we still pay on those duplexes. We pay water.
Yeah, well,
and it's like every time it's like, I want to split it, but it's like, oh, it's like a few grand to split it, but it's not. But you can never say, you can never say half and half, because I say, I never use showers. It's.
Yeah, I just charge a flat fee. Like the average, I don't know. I do it like $45 a unit for water and trash, and then like it's $90. And sometimes I lose, sometimes I win.
But it's still a little bit, yeah.
But when that person moves out, you need to add it. You say the rent $630 plus water, trash, and sewage. And then when they come in for their application, I express to them it's $45. They never balk at the thing. I don't say their rent $675.
Right. It's still separate.
It's separate, and it's a separate bill. All right, so that's cool how you got into real estate. 4.5 years. You're still trucking. You got 16 units, 17 units.
So we got those for $300,
right.
And that was our first commercial loan. So what we did is
you had to go get a loan.
We got a blanket loan.
Okay, what bank did you go? RCB.
Yeah, Jim Gray.
I don't know him. I just got a car loan, truck loan.
Yeah, and and they did it.
What did they appraise for?
Fast. They appraised for I think they did $325, and we got it for $300.
So you're like 80 something percent. So did you have to come with the money, or did he finance the whole?
I did put in a down payment. What we did is I did a private loan for
from Russia.
No, from here, from another guy that when you and for like $30,000 private loan for them.
Okay, great.
And
just for the acquisition.
That's for the down payment, and then.
So that guy that gave you the $30,000, did he put a second mortgage on the house to secure his $30,000, or on the units?
It's just basically a loan.
Like a friend. Okay,
yeah. It's like a 5-year interest only. What I did is I always do like 2 options. Like we can amortize it over 5, or we can do interest only. I mean, you could see the payment is higher when it's amortized, right? But you get less
interest only, yeah. Interest only is what I would do.
Yeah.
I'll loan you $30,000 for 5 years for interest only.
5%, that's more than you can get.
Oh, well, no, I'm talking 10, but I was Anyway, you know
Pen
that
is
Russia,
more
they're, criminals. There's gangsters out there. Like,
in the bank you can get 14-17% in checking account.
yeah.
But, your money is not that safe.
Okay,
So-
okay. So, all right, I'm just fascinated that you're in the game, 17 units, you did 2 transactions.
Right. So then one of them turned bad.
One of the
I mean,
units?
yeah, the neighborhood. It got like 7 foreclosures on the block.
Dang.
We couldn't rent it out. I mean,
What side of town was it?
It was a Southwest 51st in May area,
Yeah.
that area. I mean, it turned fast too. And what happened is like the tenant moved out, we redid it, and then it's like we're having a hard time renting it, and then we got like a break-in. And then, we just, I got police calling me. I'm like, what's going on? And there's a window broken. So we fixed that up. Then like it broke in 2 more times. And I'm like, man, we need to like really rent it out.
Or realize this, what's going on.
Right. And we got the tenant in there, and then like 10 months later we had to evict because they stopped paying. And they trashed it. I mean, like...
No, was this, you still had a property manager, right?
Yeah, we still have
So you've had a property manager from Jump Street, right? Since you started?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, but basically I'm at the point, it's like, I don't want them going there, because that's kind of, I don't want them to be there, because it's kind of a scary place. So what it is, actually, one of the realtors from Ria, Yolanda, I think,
Yolanda,
she
okay.
helped me sell it too. So
You basically dumped
right?
it. Did you lose money on the deal? Well, you got it at a
Kinda.
deal.
It was part of a package, so it's one of those geeky finance things where we kind of lost money
over time, right?
So we got a release from the bank for more than I thought we actually owed on it, and then on paper I lost money that I was able to apply against all kinds of taxes,
Yeah,
write-offs,
I know.
and it's crazy.
I know, it's
like
amazing.
I know I lost money, but at the same time,
But really,
it
you
looks
didn't.
like I made it.
Plus, you made depreciation during that whole time,
Right.
or for
what
the
actually
several
happened
years.
is, and I'm kicking myself for not actually pulling the trigger on it, but as I figured it out, and it's really close to April 15th, and it's like because of the way it pushed me into this bracket where if I would contribute 10 grand to an IRA, I could get 6 back in tax, tax refund, just because of that transaction.
That's awesome.
And it's all still, and it was painful because, but you had to get, at some point, you just got to get rid of them.
Max, you are an incredible person. All right, so real estate, how do you stay focused on your day job? Do you think about real estate all the time? I mean, what's your goals? I mean, you love your day job, but I mean, is there a number you want to cash flow,
well, actually,
X amount per month, or what?
At some point, it's all about having, something of your own that you can control, and it provides you stability. This is definitely a long-term game. I mean, we're not doing this to live off the cash flow, right?
Yeah.
That's why we're both staying with our jobs. My wife is a statistician. I do. We both numbers.
And you have a new baby, right?
Yeah, we just had 7 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second boy, and we were just talking the other day with my wife about this whole goal. We have,
like, what are we going? Where are we doing?
We do that. We have meetings.
I do too at the Van Calver crib.
Yeah.
We're talking about this on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Right.
It's we were just talking. It's like at some point you kind of realize there's never really like an end to it, because there's always the next thing,
or
next
another
thing
deal.
you want to do, another deal,
yeah.
Or you want to do something. At some point, we definitely want to get to the point where we don't have to work for a living,
sure,
right?
And you could accelerate that. I mean,
right.
you've and the crazy thing is that you've done this once with the stock market. I just think real estate's 10 times safer,
it's more safe,
and you can do it that fast,
right?
I mean, look, you jumped up with 17 units. I mean, definitely took a length of time, but I mean, there's people trying to cash out right now that have 10 or 15, 20 units,
right?
That they want to retire on,
And to me, that's a good long-term plan. You accumulate your units, and then at some point, I mean, like looking at the guy that we bought them from, that's a really good retirement plan right there. I mean,
mine.
You basically you sell it as a portfolio, and you collect.
Yeah, let
interest
them
on
manage it.
That's
They're basically working for you because you're powered by the white paper, the mortgage.
Right.
All right, so you've been through this for some time. What advice would you give someone that's new? I mean, you're from Russia. I mean, I don't know what your economic background was in Russia, but obviously it's not as elaborate and fancy pants here in Oklahoma or in the United States. You worked very hard in school. What advice would you give someone that they're thinking about getting into real estate, or they're scared, or they're nervous?
I'm thinking just a perspective that I had, from coming over here. There's a lot of opportunities here that people don't even see, just because you kind of take it for granted. There's a lot of stuff that's easy,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the most dangerous thing is to settle kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Because you could, like when I was in New York for a couple of months for my internship, you see people. You could live on $300 a month, or you could live on $3,000 a month, or $30,000 a month. It doesn't matter. You find these different niches, and if you really think about it, like, what's the worst that could happen? Yeah. You lose your house and whatever your business.
Start over.
Right? Start over, right? I mean, your knowledge is still there. Hopefully, people and connections. You have. What's the best thing about getting a green card was? So like while we were on work visas and student visas. You only when you get a work visa, it's for that one job, right? It's not for
anywhere.
Job. It's that job.
Right.
So we were joking, when we got a work visa, it's like, okay, fine, I can now work at McDonald's if I have to.
Right.
I didn't have that safety because, seriously, you lose everything you have. You go get some minimum wage job while you're working. You work on your next business, right?
Right.
9 out of 10 businesses fail, so just start 10. This country allows you. You're not locked in. You're not born into something, and you have to stay there.
Yeah. So your advice is to persist and to try it and just do it. That's. I always say I came from nothing, and I realize. What's the worst thing that can happen? I owe money. I'm in debt. I failed, or I can grow from it. I've lost a lot of money in real estate. I've done well, but if I never would have just took the leap of faith and just did it. I similar story. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I started buying houses at $2,000 down, and I didn't understand interest rates. I was paying 10% to. Back
then was a good rate. Right?
Yeah, and they were a gangster. When I started really thinking about it, I'm really working for them. And I turned them back in, but I learned so much. But I wouldn't be where I am if I never said, I'm going to do this at all costs. So if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're on the edge, just do it. I met a young kid the other day that was at the lunch, and he just quit his job. He was in physical therapy, and he met someone. Actually, he was treating someone, Pat Poynton, which is even funnier. And he started listening to him, hanging out with him. Then he started coming to our landlord lunches, and he literally just quit his job. He's only 26 years old, so he's got so much time ahead of him. You can start over 5 more times, 10 more times. Who says you cannot? That's the thing. Who says you can't? So, Max, how old are you, actually?
I'm 35.
35, yeah. Okay.
It's the best thing in this country. You could start. If you decide to go and change careers.
You could do it.
You can do it. There's nothing stopping you. There's whatever you want to do, you can do. You don't have to go pay some bribes, figure out. You have to fit in certain social class.
And that's where you came
pick
from.
Where you, when we grew up during communism, during Soviet Union, nobody had
nothing.
anything.
You were just told to do what, where,
just
and how.
Right.
What job you had,
owned everything, and I think part of like when I was in college, I started. It sounds crazy, now it's like sounds scary. It's like, okay, I'm gonna start an investing fund and then go get some sponsors. The reason I was doing that is nobody told me I couldn't, right?
Yeah.
So you just do it. I started an offshore bank, opened an E-Trade account, and and it's like,
I think
why not? Because I read some article on the internet that this is how you do it. You open a bank in Panama and set up an account in an offshore entity.
I think you just hit the motivation for everybody. No one said you couldn't do it. And that's why we're brainwashed. That we're brainwashed that you can't do it. And you thought, just like me, no one's, when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, the biggest thing that happened to me was I can be rich, even though I was broke, even though I came from a very poor, broken family. But I'm able to be wealthy if I want to.
Right.
But no one told me that I couldn't. No, people did tell me that I couldn't. But I just didn't believe it. But that's like you. No one told you that you couldn't start a fund, that you couldn't do the stock market, and you were savvy enough. So tell me about a lot of people. I talk. I'm a landlord, and I do a lot of landlording. I teach a lot of landlords, but I really don't talk a lot about property management. Tell me about your hiring a property manager. You like the pros and cons. Don't say their name on the radio because I don't want to blast them. But good, bad, the ugly. We were talking a little bit off the radio earlier, but
I think if you don't have the time, you certainly could try, because you need somebody. Whether you actually hire somebody and train them, you come up with a system and you hire them and train them, but you need quite a bit of units to do that to make it profitable. Usually they take a percentage of whatever they collect.
What's your percentage that you have now?
9%. But they also there's other fee. Like when they coordinate, they'll take a percentage on top of repairs. Things like that.
If they make phone calls, they charge you.
Right.
Trip charges. Throw out some charges.
Sometimes there are some charges, right? They could do trip charges if it's over so many miles and stuff. So yeah, stuff kind of as long as it's transparent enough and up front, that's what it is. I mean, you trade your time for money. You trade money for time, right? Because basically, okay, I know that I couldn't get to it for the next 2 weeks, but they could. The downside of it is, it's actually in the same vein. They have a couple hundred, maybe 300 other units. Mm-hmm. And there's always some emergency somewhere, right? Yeah. So yours is not the priority, or not always the priority. How it would be for you, if it's something going, usually I have to really kind of jump on them whenever we have, tenants are moving out, and then there's a couple of units where I just realized, it's been almost a month and I don't even have a punch list of what needs to be done for a makeover, right? And it's like, why is it taking so long? And then it takes another week or two
to get back with you
to actually repair stuff and then start leasing, right? And it's like, you have a 30-day notice, you should schedule
jump on
that.
Right? I know, that's how we do it.
But there might be, they get busy and they don't have enough resources or something to do it. And at that point, I'm just, okay, so what was the point of me outsourcing?
Because you did all the work.
I would do this. It would take me 2 weeks too.
And you would have saved money. I mean, there's a good and bad with property management. I think that, I work with a lot of people and try to coach them and help them. Some people, it's just smart just to have a property manager, and there's enough equity, or not equity, there's enough cash flow to do do that. All right,
you have to budget it in, even if you're going to do it yourself.
Yes.
Whether you pay yourself, or let's say sometime you really don't want to, or you really cannot manage, right?
Well, what if you got injured? Right. But I agree. I calculate management in my, I just pay myself in essence. Mm-hmm. Throw out some numbers, like, do they charge a fee to rent a place out? Do they charge half a fee, a full month's rent?
Right. So
what's that fee?
Half a month's first rent.
Okay.
And then what we do, if they renew the lease for another year, they charge $100, which to me is worth it.
Sure, keep them in there as long as possible.
Yeah,
and it's an incentive for them.
I mean, the killer of all the cash flow is turnover.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter. People, it's always like a couple grand, something.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, which math wizard over here, what's your average you think of a turnover is? Because I have a general idea of my world, but
like in terms of percentage, or
no, like what's the cost? Someone moves out to paint it, to do a makeover. Do you know, like, what's a general number?
It'd be a couple grand.
Yeah, $1,500 in my world, and I try to do at all costs not to have someone move out.
To me, right.
Whatever I can do.
One thing, it's this. Let's say this couple of grand, right? But let's say it takes you 2 or 3 weeks to even do it. So that right there, you lost a month of rent.
And then,
right?
then you start showing it, and then you have another month.
Because you kind of want to be at least done before you start showing. So there's some units might rent out, before, but usually, a lot of people can't picture. I can walk in and say, hey, we're working on a deal right now. I just submitted an offer. You walk in, like pink walls, green carpet. Like most people would walk in, it's like, no way. I'm not.
I'm gonna have to paint it anyway.
And to me, it's like, well, you change the paint, this looks good, right? I mean, it's, I'm looking at the structure, right? And then the layout. And, I can imagine what it's going to look like. But a lot of people cannot, or like they think it's way more money than it really would be. So they just want to deal with it. Okay,
when you calculated your like $2,000, is that with lost rents too, or is that
no? That's usually there, and that's the part where
is that a total cost, or is it? So listen,
I've actually paid $4 sometimes too. It just depends.
So like $600 a month, $1,200 plus the $2,000. So you're looking at $32,000. Yeah, and you need to factor that in. I'm just people need to factor that in. You just because if you're running it too skinny, which I did for many years, 10 years, always every dollar I make, put it back in. And when you're at a certain point, when you have so many units, like even 17, you've got to have some sort of a buffer there,
right,
or mathematical sense that, man, this is going to cost me a couple grand in lost rents as well on top of that.
And Murphy's Law too. It's like when you have, you never have like one empty. I think the worst time we had like 6 empty, and that hurts.
Yeah.
And
I
in the
know.
wintertime, it's like it's
yeah. Even and the mortgage payments still do. I mean,
Exactly,
I love that
yeah.
people think that you're a millionaire, that you own a house.
But
that's
the
the
perception.
millionaire happens when you own and finance on everybody, and you just sit back. All right, so the end goal is to live comfortably. Is there a number? Do you want like 100 units? Because I had that dumb, I'm gonna get 100. When I get to 100 units, then
you want 5. Right?
It's not that I want more. It's just costs go up tremendously. Is it like you want to sustain enough income to provide for you and your wife?
I think so, and for the kids,
Yeah.
it's like you worry about your own retirement, and ever since we had a kid,
Yeah.
we're just talking about it's like, well, now I gotta think about maybe make sure his life is okay, and start, and so suddenly your time horizon expands.
Yeah. Well,
a few more decades.
Yeah, totally. All right, so let's talk about we're running out of time here. Let's talk about something that an moment, a moment where it was like, I shouldn't have did that. It could be a mistake or it can be a positive thing, but think for a second. Something that's come to your mind is like, dang, I should have did that, or I should have done that, or I'm never going to do that again. Is there any of those thoughts come to your mind?
There's a few, just in terms of like with property, trusting that something is done. When people say it's done,
and it's not done,
and it's not done, and then I only find out a couple of months later because because I'm thinking, okay, so I'm paying you to manage it, so you checked it out, right?
Mm.
But then a couple of months later, it comes out, well, what happened? I thought this was here, and it's not.
Do you have any recourse? Have you? I mean, it sounds like you have some management conflicts.
But by now, basically, what we do is, I stay on top of what's going on.
Well, how much do you think you have to manage them? Like, do you call them every day? Do you call them once a week?
Not every day, but once a week at least. And we do a lot of things through email. So we're one of their bigger clients, and so
they're a young company. They're a small company. Well, if you're 17,
they have like 200. I think like their next client has 16.
Okay, so they have a lot of one people or two people.
They have a lot of people. Yeah, they have.
So they're running around like chickens.
Basically, but they have like they have this lady that's kind of handles our account. Usually, she's the one who's on top of our properties,
dedicated to you.
So yeah, so that's actually great because then she's aware of everything that's going on. So I can talk to her and,
directly.
And we usually go. The thing that I did learn, we do everything by email or text, so there's a written record of who said what and when.
Sure.
Because a lot of it, I think,
confusion.
a lot of that actually a lot of confusion stems from that, where I thought you guys were going to do that, and then they think, well, no, we think something different.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of conflict could arrive.
Man, I don't want to wrap this up, but we gotta, people are gonna not listen. I don't know. I heard that radio show should be under an hour, but I mean, we can go. I've definitely got to bring you back on the show soon, especially we'll work on your math skills. Max, is it okay if anybody emails you or contacts you? Do you want to throw out an email? I think you have a wonderful story. There's so many more gems in there. Oh, another thought. How is your wife involved in this? Is she down? Is she nervous? Because usually some ladies that are married to entrepreneurs, especially risk taker like yourself, how does she play a role?
She is actually very supportive of it. The thing is, her family too, they entrepreneurs. When she was growing up
in the Ukraine.
Her parents, they have a trucking company, and
cool.
They've always kind of instilled this that you should have something of your own. Your own assets that you can control. So when I introduced her to Rich Dad book, and she's like, "Oh yeah, this makes total sense." And so we actually,
dude, that's kind of attractive. Woo!
So when we, that first deal we did, so 2 weeks, and we were pregnant with our first kid, and it was 2 weeks before he was due, and that's when we did the whole thing. Like we went to Kiyosaki's seminar in Dallas.
Wow.
And that was one of the best conventions. They had a bunch of different sessions on financing, on different mortgages, and all kinds of different investing. And and we just had a blast. And then we came back, and our kid, well, they know our kid at the closing company because he was there in his first 1 month old. That was his first closing, and then we came in for another one.
Did you take a picture of that?
We did. We took.
That's so cool. Like when he's older.
So we used the same title. We refinanced our house in there, and then we did another. So we sold that one, but we at the same time we bought another one.
What title company did you use?
It's OKC. Title.
An
it's the one abstract and title. Yeah, it's the one in Edmond. They have a few branches.
Yeah,
I use the one in Edmond.
That's cool.
I've closed once at the Old Republic.
Yeah, that's where I closed.
That was where it was sold because they the seller picked where they were going to. I mean, the buyer picked where they were going to close. So I didn't really.
Man, it's been a pleasure. I can't wait to see what your kids turn out to be with your mind and with your balls of steel. And your wife that's entrepreneur. I mean, you got a great family going on. And hopefully you'll get citizenship soon. We're going through this political climate. Yeah. You never know. They may make it easier for citizenship. So hopefully you can get into that wave. Max, it's been a pleasure. Please tell people what your email is. So there's got to be someone out there that you can connect, some other nerd rock guy out there or gal that I'll crunches numbers.
Jonathan, we'll spend hours talking.
I wouldn't call Jonathan a nerd. Well, I don't know if he's going to listen to it, but I roomed with him. He was cool. He's definitely analytical. I enjoy hanging out with him as well because I'm not like that. I'm not detailed, and Jonathan and you are detailed, which I think is super successful. All right, get your email out there, homie.
It's max@maxbess.com.
Spell it.
max@maxbess.com.
All right. Well, party people out there in the real estate world.
Get a house.
Get a house. That's right. Build freedom. This guy can do it.
And if you lose a few $100 on the first one,
even if you lose, I lost $10,000 on one of my first ones, but.
You learn a lot.
Yeah, that was there was concrete in the sewer line, but life happens. Anyway, find financial freedom. Tune in. Go to our website, SavvyRadioShow.com. We're updating new episodes. If you want to get educated, we got classes. Go to classokc.com and spread the word and let people know that you're in real estate. Have a great day, and thanks a lot, Max.
Thanks.